Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to talk for a little bit about the 2024 NBA draft, and more specifically, Bronny James. Bronny has been one of the single most discussed draft prospects in this entire draft class. We've gotten some really interesting news surrounding him over the past few days. It started off when not too long ago we got a report that Bronny was going to enter the NCAA transfer portal, which means he's going to leave USC, University of Southern California, if he does end up deciding to go back to college. But then today, the reason I'm making this video is we also got a report from Shams that he's deciding to, at the same time, declare for the 2024 NBA draft, keeping his options open in either direction. He's going to go through the draft process, do some workouts, get team evaluations, discuss with general managers. His agent's going to talk to people and basically figure out what is his stock like? What are positions that he could land in terms of team situation? Where could he go in the draft? Even if he goes undrafted, could maybe a team be interested in signing him? Just get as much information as possible. And if he likes what he hears, he could stick in the draft. And if he doesn't, he could always go back to college and go somewhere else, leaving USC likely after just one season. According to a report from ESPN, this is the most likely outcome, that he does go back to college. But I think him staying in the NBA draft is still very possible. And his draft stock is something that's extremely hard to gauge. I don't think the stats that Bronny put up in his first season really reflect how good of a player he is or can be. He was just 19 years old. He, of course, dealt with that heart issue as well at the beginning of the season, which really took him out of his rhythm. He had to come back later in the year, and he didn't end up putting up the best numbers, just 4.8 points per game, 3 boards, and 2 dimes. But the defense is certainly there. He's a very high-level defender, has great physical tools, and I think the shot is way better than people give it credit for. He just needs a full season under his belt, and he's only 19 years old, so maybe that experience needs to come in college. But I think if he gets put in the right situation in the NBA, if a team, say, like Miami drafts him, for example, I think he could really develop into a fantastic player. It's just a matter of if he's ready to do that yet, or if he needs a little bit more time in college before he's ready for that transition. But it goes way beyond Bronny himself as a player, because while I think is high potential, and I'm sure a lot of other people do, there's also the LeBron James aspect of things, because according to LeBron James himself a number of times, he's got a lot of interest in playing with Bronny James before he retires. And we heard a quote from him a couple of days ago that he doesn't know how many years he has left in the NBA. He hinted at maybe it's only 1, 2, or 3 more left before he ends up retiring, which would be insane to even think about LeBron James leaving the NBA with how good he still is. But if his body's breaking down, he's not really feeling it anymore. I mean, he's played over 20 seasons. It makes sense that he's nearing the end of his career, and playing with Bronny James could be the final thing he wants to do before he ends it. So that adds a whole other aspect to this whole Bronny James draft situation, because now it's not just drafting Bronny James, who could be a good player in his own right. It's, do you draft Bronny James to potentially get the chance of getting LeBron James as well, who, again, while he's way up there in age, is still one of the best players in the entire world. LeBron James has a player option going into next season for the Lakers, which he's almost certainly going to decline and allow himself to become a free agent. Even if he does re-sign with the Lakers, he can get way more money if he doesn't accept that option. So he's going to go ahead and do that, which will put him out there in the open market. The Lakers do seem like a good spot for him to stay, because they have Anthony Davis. They have the potential to trade for a star in the offseason. They can attract big names because they're a big market. If he wants to compete for a ring, LA isn't a bad spot to finish his career. However, if they, say, for example, go out in the first round this year, at the moment, they're a playing team, like they could even lose in the play-in and not even make the playoffs entirely. Would LeBron James then consider even more strongly going to team up with Bronny? If he decides that LA, he doesn't feel like he can win a ring here, so what's the point if he can just go play with his son? I think the Lakers' eventual outcome at the end of the season, whether they go far in the playoffs or miss him entirely, could result in a lot of dominoes falling with this whole Bronny James, LeBron James situation. And also, I think for LeBron to go somewhere with Bronny, it has to be the right situation. Like, if Bronny gets drafted by the Utah Jazz, LeBron's not going to play in Utah. And that's nothing against Utah or the Jazz themselves. I just don't think LeBron wants to do that at this spot in his career. But if I think Bronny gets drafted by a great situation where LeBron feels like he can compete, then there's a real chance he could go there, especially if the Lakers do end up disappointing. So let's talk about some situations that could work with this dynamic. The first one that comes to mind is Oklahoma City. And part of that is because I'm a Thunder fan, but there have also been a lot of hints kind of pointing that way. For example, at every turn that LeBron James has had an opportunity, he has praised the Oklahoma City Thunder relentlessly. Whether it's Sam Presti just out of nowhere at All-Star Game interviews, whether it's on his podcast recently with JJ Redick, where he complimented Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams and Shea. Mark Daigneault was given a lot of compliments by the two of them, both LeBron and JJ, on a different episode. LeBron very clearly likes what OKC is going on, and they've got a track record of developing young players pretty well. I think Bronny could work well in that system as a Thunder fan, whether he's playing in the G League for a little bit or he's on the NBA roster and playing alongside his dad. The Thunder also have $1 billion draft picks, so using one on Bronny, even if he doesn't pan out, isn't the end of the world. They don't have a lot this year, but it's easy to trade into the second round. It takes like cash considerations or just a different first round pick or second round pick rather to make that happen, so it would be easy. And if both sides are open, they would become the favorites in the Western Conference immediately. A team with Shea, Jalen Williams, Chet, LeBron James, that great supporting cast, Mark Daigneault at the helm, Sam Presti there to make trades and upgrades around that team. They would be a juggernaut in the Western Conference. So if LeBron both wants to compete for the future and Bronny wants to be put in a good situation, I think Oklahoma City could be a dream come true for both sides. Next team that comes to mind for me are the Miami Heat. LeBron, of course, has already been there before. He knows that system, knows what it's like to work with Eric Spoelstra, has also been very complimentary of him at times. And they've got a pretty good cast that LeBron could go play alongside with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. I don't know if, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson would be there because they might have to make some trades to make the money work. It also depends if LeBron's willing to take a pay cut to make it happen. We'd have to wait and see on that front. And then with Bronny James, this team has an incredible track record with developing talent. Miami does it better than almost anybody else, especially with undrafted players. If Bronny ends up in that spot, he could go through a same developmental program like a Max Strus or a Gabe Vincent or even a Duncan Robinson, all guys that they developed into these players that earned a lot of money because they went through the Miami Eric Spoelstra system. I think Bronny could really thrive over there. And again, the familiarity with LeBron could also be a bit of a draw. Getting to play in South Beach is great when you're going into the twilight of your career and still getting to compete for championships in a much weaker Eastern Conference than the West. And the final spot that I think would be perfect for the two of them, and is probably Adam Silver's dream, is the San Antonio Spurs. Imagine, first of all, you get Bronny under Greg Popovich, who is maybe the greatest coach of all time. He gets to develop and learn under him, playing alongside Victor and a bunch of other young players. I think it could be a great situation for him, but at the same time, you would get LeBron James playing alongside Victor Wembanyama. The GOAT, one of the GOATs at the very least, the face of the league for this past generation, and one of the greatest prospects of all time, now playing with a future face of the league, a future GOAT level player, and a lot of people consider the greatest prospect of all time. It would be the craziest passing of the torch moment that the NBA, really sports in general, have ever seen. And you have LeBron and Wemby on the same squad, you're immediately going to be pretty good. You want to talk about guys that can get Wemby the ball. It's LeBron James, and I don't think they would be finished there. Free agents would probably be lining up to go play with that squad, and they've got so many draft picks and young players that they could make a pretty convincing deal to some other teams and say, hey, give us your star, we've got all these assets, and bring players in to team up with LeBron and Wemby. I still think Trae Young would be attainable. You bring in Trae Young and build a big three of him, LeBron, Wemby, get some good supporting players. Say you still have like Devin Vassell, for example, out there. The Spurs could very quickly become a powerhouse in the Western Conference. They may not be the favorites from day one, but they're going to be one of the top teams. And you give them time to build chemistry, you add more talent. This is a squad that can compete for a championship in not too long. If you want to talk about accelerating the timeline, that's the way to do it for the Spurs, because with how good Wemby is, I don't think you're going to have a lot of time in staying in the lottery before Wemby is in the conversation for the best in the world. It would be a great spot for LeBron to again pass that torch. And Adam Silver, this is his dream in terms of getting ratings. Imagine the attention that a LeBron-Wemby squad would get. So OKC, Miami, and San Antonio are my favorite three spots for Bronny and LeBron to land as a duo. If it's outside LA, there is always just a chance that the Lakers draft Bronny, none of this even matters. But if they're going somewhere else, which I think is more fun to think about, those are my three favorite landing spots. There are other spots out there too, like Golden State. Say LeBron and Steph Curry finally get to team up. I know the Warriors tried to trade for him at this deadline, so maybe that's a potential indication that there's interest there from LeBron's party. Philly, I think, is not a bad spot either. Go play alongside Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, and they're going to have a max spot available, so maybe a team like them, and a bunch of other teams all over the place, like maybe going back to Cleveland even. That could be interesting. So there's a lot of different teams. Those are just my three favorites. And it's interesting to think about how high would teams beyond this scope of squads that I've talked about be willing to draft Bronny to get LeBron James. Say LeBron went out there and said, I don't care where it is, I will go wherever Bronny James is drafted. How high would Bronny go? Would he go top 5, top 10 lottery? Would he still be a second round pick because teams don't really see that as a big of a swing factor if it's a worse squad? I'm sure a team like the Milwaukee Bucks, for example, would love the idea of that, getting Bronny over there. it's really interesting. We've never seen a draft situation quite like this. Again, none of it may even matter going into this year because Bronny could very well go back to college. But if he stays in the draft, it's going to make for one of the most interesting draft situations we've ever seen, especially because this isn't a great draft class in general. Like that, I think only incentivizes teams even more to take the swing on Bronny, who I think could still be really good in his own right. And it's made even more interesting by the fact that you could get LeBron James in the process. It's really intriguing to me. I've been thinking about it for a while, and now with all this news, I finally got a chance to go ahead and make a video about it. Let me know what you think. Like, how high would you be willing to have your team take Bronny if you knew you were going to get LeBron James? And also, let me know what team it is, because it varies with the situation. Like, I don't think the Wizards are going to draft Bronny super high up there, like at the 3rd overall pick or something like that, just to get LeBron, because he's not really moving the needle for that team in terms of making them a championship contender. They're still really far away. I think it's going to have to be a middle of the pack to a contending squad to really make the most out of this potential scenario. And yeah, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. How good do you think Bronny could be? I still think he can be like a Drew Holiday, Jalen Suggs type player, maybe even Marcus Smart, where he's this elite defensive guard that makes these hustle plays, that can knock down some outside shots for you, create for others. I still think he's got a lot of potential. I don't believe that that one USC season was indicative of how he's going to be as a player. I think a lot of the hate that people have towards him is just because he is LeBron's son. I know LeBron himself gets a lot of hate, and I'm sure there are going to be a lot of comments relating to that under this video as well. So, yeah, I think that's all I've got to say about the situation. I guess we'll see going forward. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, safe back.